Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on this third day of August, 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got fire danger to look at, and there are no areas of extreme or high fire danger in the state today, and with all the precipitation. There are flood watches continue again today for the central interior areas, all the streams and draining the central interior Tanana Valley area, Fairbanks area, Chena, for example, and also into the western Alaska Range. There around Denali, McKinley River, and Minchumina, and also now for the streams draining the Susitna River, or into the Susitna River for the Susitna Valley there, especially the Yentna River flood watch out for through tonight into early tomorrow for all those areas. Continuing only addition there in the Susitna Valley from what we've seen over the weekend. And moving on to satellite imagery, see some clearing taking place along the mid-Yukon River Valley area with looks like showers just to the south developing there over the southern Nulato Hills, eastward in toward Fairbanks. Quite a bit of rain fell, 24-hour rainfall amount. Fairbanks, about 3/4 of an inch of precipitation there, with Nenana picking up over an inch in the last 24 hours, and that keeping those flood watches in effect there. McKinley River had another 2.5 inches of rain. So pretty wet conditions up there, and that extended all the way up onto the north slope through the eastern central Brooks Range, with Adigan Pass picking up, let's see, they had just under an inch, 9/10 of an inch of precipitation in the last 24 hours, with areas over the central and eastern north slope picking up anywhere from 1/4 to 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. And that area of rainfall extends all the way down to the eastern North Gulf Coast, where Cordova had about 7/10 of an inch of precipitation, 1/2 an inch falling at Seward. And the southeast coast, another wet day today with anywhere from 1/3 to an inch of rain falling in the last 24 hours or so. And another front pushing moisture in across southern Kodiak Island, just under 1/2 an inch fell at Sitka today. Or I'm sorry, at Sitkinak on southern Kodiak Island there, Sitkinak Island. And light rain pushing into the state airport area up the east side. And then out over the Bering Sea, you can see a few breaks there, some sun breaking out over the Pribilof Islands, especially to the east of the islands there, extending back up toward Nunivak Island. A clear day mostly, at least in part, for Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula, as well as up over the northwest interior. And you see a few breaks out over the Bering Sea, but a lot of widespread cloudiness out there as well. And it looks like some breaks showing up on the south coast of Prince of Wales Island during the late afternoon. On the chart today, trough there, keeping it wet over the southeast coast with more showery conditions, mostly cloudy skies over the eastern North Gulf Coast. And again, the areas of rain, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, and the moderate amounts of rain up through the interior along and east of the low center and the trough there over the central interior, with rain all the way up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then the sunshine over Norton Sound. Breezes, 30-35 mile an hour winds out of the north-northwest on the backside of that low just south of the Alaska Peninsula there across the eastern Aleutians, and also some clearing going on over the Fox Islands as well. Then higher pressure farther to the west, and you can see the next system coming onto the chart, the warm front spreading rain into the Shimei and Attu area, and that'll advance eastward tonight. The low center will move to just west of Attu Island toward morning, with rain spreading to Amchitka Island. High pressure farther or just to the east of that will make for light winds and low clouds and fog, pretty widespread over the Aleutians, Bering Sea, all the way up into the Chukchi Sea. Otherwise, look for showers to diminish over the interior tonight, but will linger into tomorrow morning. And rain, Kodiak Island, chance of rain for the North Gulf Coast, and another trough keeps it wet over the southern central Panhandle, a little more showery to the north, but that next front will push wind and rain in back over the southeast coast throughout the day tomorrow, especially into the afternoon as it approaches. The low starting to slow down a little bit now, kind of drifting a little bit to the northeast, and That's going to keep a chance of showers there for the Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island throughout the day. But look for some clearing along and south of the Alaska Peninsula. High pressure weakens over the eastern Bering Sea as that next system pushes the front of the central Aleutian. Scattered thunderstorms possible over the eastern interior. Outlook for Wednesday, again, a few thunderstorms possible up in the central interior Alaska Range area to the Yukon River. And otherwise partly to mostly sunny and dry for the Seward Peninsula and the northern interior. Maybe some fog and low clouds along the Arctic coast. And still wet over the southern panhandle, but the rainfall will be lighter and more intermittent, but it will still be cloudy and cool right up along the North Gulf Coast. Partly sunny, increasing showers over south central Alaska, all across southern Alaska, especially the mountainous terrain in the afternoon. And you can see that low kind of just weakens off the coast of the panhandle, doesn't really push in, and the front washes out as well, and that's just a lot of leftover moisture. And then back out over the Alaska Peninsula, that next front, breezy and wet with increasing rain along the southwest coast from Cape Newton and maybe Togiak all the way up to southwestern Norton Sound in the afternoon. And pretty stiff northwest winds coming around the backside of that low across Adak and Atka. Lows for tonight, mid to upper 30s North Slope and Arctic Coast, and 40s in the Brooks Range with lower 50s south of the mountains to upper 40s on the southwest coast, lower to mid 50s in the south central Alaska area and Panhandle, lower 50s Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow, lower 50s Aleutians, mid 50s Bering Sea. Otherwise recovering, 65 to 72, so sit in the Manuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage area, near 70 in the Copper River Basin, near 70 in the Yukon Flats, 40s North Slope or 40s Arctic Coast, 60s for the Panhandle, lows in the 30s north, 40s and 50s south, followed by highs 60s to lower 70s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Tuesday morning, IFR along the Arctic coast and part of the North Slope, marginal VFR to the Brooks Range, south of the mountains, mostly VFR, some marginal VFR along the Yukon River. Otherwise, VFR right on down in toward Togiak Bay, maybe Dillingham. Marginal for Iliamna Lake to Kemishak Bay, Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, southeast Kenai Peninsula, some IFR, but Prince William Sound marginal. Marginal VFR, northern Susitna Valley and along the Alaska Range, and marginal for the Panhandle with IFR right along the coast, the Aleutian, southern Bering Sea, IFR right up across the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, Seward Peninsula. And for the afternoon, now just IFR on the north side of the Seward Peninsula, VFR over the southern areas to the Nulato Hills, marginal VFR, Yukon Delta, VFR, the Kuskokwim Delta, Nunivak Island. Still some lingering marginal VFR in the west central interior. Otherwise, pretty good for the interior tomorrow afternoon. Some marginal VFR into the Wrangell Mountains. IFR east side of Kodiak Island, across the Gulf to just south of Yakutat, and then cutting across, we'll say, the northern three quarters of the southeast coast. Bering Sea, IFR from St. Matthew Island, the Pribilofs, on down across the Aleutians and western Alaska Peninsula. Wednesday morning, IFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, otherwise the western and central areas, mostly marginal VFR North Slope, Brooks Range, southward to the Yukon River and the Kuskokwim River, eastward into Cook Inlet, VFR, Prince William Sound VFR, marginal VFR along the Alaska Range into the 40-mile country with some IFR. They'll extend down in toward Yakutat across the extreme eastern Copper River Basin and the Gulf. Marginal VFR for the Panhandle. IFR again for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, including the Pribilofs, with that area extending in across Bristol Bay and in across the southwest mountains. And for the Wednesday afternoon forecast, again, just about, solid IFR for the Bering Sea from the Strait on down. Now the Aleutians, IFR except for Kiska, Amchitka, they'll be marginal. Marginal VFR pushes into southwest Kodiak Island with, looks like IFR in the later part of the afternoon, arriving at Sitkinak. Bristol Bay, King Salmon right on the edge of the marginal VFR zone, otherwise pretty good in the interior. Some marginal VFR, though, up the east side of the Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range, Northway and Tok, and just about making it to Eagle. Otherwise, IFR on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, marginal for the Panhandle, Anatuvik and Anigan, both VFR tomorrow, and Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR western eastern entrances, rainy, same forecast. VFR, windy VFR. Isabel looking good, VFR flying through the pass there. Mentasta also looking at for a VFR day on Tuesday. And Tanita, VFR in the forecast. Same for Prince William Sound, pretty good day. Or will be VFR flying day tomorrow there. And Chilkoot and White looks the only pass that's sort of marginal. Passes that are sort of marginal. Freezing levels, 8,000 feet. Central southern Alaska rising slowly, sloping up to about 10,000 Dixon entrance. And then 4,000 feet off the Arctic coast. And the Bering Sea, 6,000 feet in the north, 8 to 10,000 feet, the extreme south, and the Aleutians. And from there, taking a look at icing. Moisture again, another batch pushing into the panhandle with that upper level low tracking eastward, a little bit farther to the south, so there won't be as much effect up on the North Gulf Coast as there was with the last one. But look for areas of considerable moderate to push in across the southeast coast tomorrow. Otherwise, up over the interior, mostly along and south of the mid-upper Yukon River Valley area, and then to the Alaska Range, possible areas of mixed icing, and the next system pushing rime icing, mostly of the light variety, into the central Aleutians. Jet stream, upper trough there over the Chukchi Sea, southwest flow, aloft there, right across the western Arctic coast, Noatak Valley. 90 knots, 90 to 70 knot west winds across the Aleutians, 100 knots in across the Panhandle. 9,000 feet south winds across the southeast coast, turning northeast across Kodiak, and at 3,000 feet, that's about 40 knots there. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop for the southeast coast, central Aleutians, and the far western Aleutians, Kodiak Island to Prince William Sound, light to isolated moderate chop.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century, and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip. Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How's the day going?
Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference. Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently. In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're one match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in it.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management.
Fire Sciences Lab, right over here.
So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. Tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fire's basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's gonna be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not much change from yesterday. Still some ice in close to the barrier islands there off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and no big changes expected for the next 5 days. So coastal water forecast here for the southeast coast. South to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots with 8-foot seas on the south coast, and southeast 20 to 25 knots with 7-foot seas on the north coast. Stevens Passage, south 20, gust 35 knots tomorrow. Sustained southerlies at 30 knots for Clarence Strait, and south 15 for Lynn Canal. Lighter winds in store for the next day for the inside waters from the south-southeast at 10 knots with seas 2 to maybe 3 feet. And out along the coast, south to southwest, 15 on the south coast, those seas running 8 to 9 feet, and east-southeast 10 to 20 knots on the north coast with 7-foot seas. Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet, northeast winds 15 knots. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast and Barren Islands for 25 to 30 knot winds. And in the case of the eastern North Gulf Coast, those will be from an easterly direction. Western North Gulf Coast across the Barrens, northeast 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 9 feet. Southern Cook Inlet, north winds 20 knots with 5-foot seas. And Kamishak Bay, north 15 with 4-foot seas. They'll swing around to the southwest at 15 knots with 3-foot seas for Wednesday. Cook Inlet, light southerly winds 10 knots. And southeast breeze at 10 for Prince William Sound. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, east winds at 20 knots with 5-foot seas, and light east winds on the western North Gulf Coast. And for the Barren Islands, southwest 15. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories tomorrow. Strongest on the east side there with 30 knot winds from the northeast and 8-foot seas. Shelikof Strait, northeast 25. North 25 from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, and for the Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 7-foot seas, and Bristol Bay, look for northeast winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And for Wednesday, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast winds 25 knots, 5 to 8-foot seas. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 15 knots, 3 to 5-foot seas, and for Bristol Bay, southeast winds at 20 knots with 2-foot seas. On Alaska Island tomorrow, west winds 10 to 15 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas. And for Unmak Island, winds south 20 knots, 8 Akanatka, small craft advisories, southeast winds 30 knots, 5 to 6-foot seas. And for Amchitka, south 30 knots, and then west 25 knots for Kiska, Shimei, and Attu. Those will be northwest 25 for Shimei and the Western Aleutians on Wednesday. Northwest 30 from Amchitka Island, turn westerly at 30 knots for 8 Akanatka, and then west-southwest 25 to 30 knots. 30 knot winds are in the forecast for the Eastern Aleutians with seas running 6 to as high as 14 feet. For For the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, light south winds at 10 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas tomorrow. North to northwest winds along the southwest coast at 15 knots. St. Lawrence Island, northerlies at 20. And then for Wednesday, north winds at 10 for St. Lawrence Island. So early dropping off there, as well as Norton Sound will be out of the east again at 10 knots. And for the Yukon Delta coast, northeast 20. Same forecast for St. Matthew Island, northeast winds 20 knots. And small craft advisories for the Yukon Delta coast for southeast winds 25 knots and 4 foot seas, while the Pribilofs are looking at an east wind at 15 knots with 5 foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea coastline tomorrow, variable 5 to 10 knot winds, so light winds, and central coast south at 10, west side southwest at 10, seas 2 feet. And west winds 15 knots, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson to Wales, northwest at 15. And for Wednesday, from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, north winds at 10 and light easterlies on the western Arctic coast. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east at 15 with southeast 15 in the forecast for the central coast. For tonight again, next front spreading rain eastward across the western Aleutians. And rain Kodiak Island tonight as that low center and front passes to your south. And that will kick the last trough into the Panhandle, keep it wet in the central, across really the entire area, but it'll be more showery in the north. Showers decrease over the interior, and then wind and rain increase again as that front presses in toward the coastline during the afternoon hours for the Panhandle. The next front spreads rain and breezy conditions into the central Aleutians, and scattered thunderstorms possible over the central interior both days. Be partly sunny northern half of the state on Wednesday, cool and showery to the south.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.